So if you want to pitch like a pro, you're gonna have to save the cat. And I will tell you in a minute what I mean by that. But first, I'm Doc John, the EntreProfessor. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I teach entrepreneurship here at the Close School of Entrepreneurship, and I have done a lot of pitching. The first tech startup that I worked on, we pitched over 60 times over the course of several years before we got funding. The most recent startup I worked on, I pitched twice and we got 2 offers the same week and we had them compete against each other. So today I'm going to tell you 6 secrets that I have found to be very effective when building pitches that get funded. So that's our goal for today. So 6 critical secrets, and you're going to want to stay to the end because I'm going to give you a bonus tip. So let's get into it. So first, save the cat. I'm going to say pitch like a screenwriter. You're probably wondering, what the heck is this save the cat thing about? All right, so if you're interested in film, you probably think of like screenplays. Somebody writes a story that goes into a film. And Save the Cat is a very famous framework for writing stories. Now, why am I talking about storytelling and filmmaking when we're talking about doing pitches? What I would like to suggest is that a pitch deck is simply a story that you want to emotionally affect people and you want to call them to some kind of an action, just like a film. And so what I'm going to walk through today is a way that you can structure a pitch, build a pitch in a way that kind of approaches things like a movie, like a film. Telling a story about a hero that's going to influence people and impact them to action. So the framework Save the Cat, one of the key things about it is the hero of the story, no matter how unlikable they might be, no matter how, even if they have a negative connotation to them, they're going to do something early on that makes you want to connect with them. They're going to save the cat. Literally, they're in early films, they would have somebody like, might be someone you don't really understand, but they save a cat from the tree or something like that, and you see their compassion, you have empathy with them as a person, right? Well, as entrepreneurs, one of the things that we're really kind of called to do or really charged with is saving the cat, and the cat is our customer. And so when I say you're going to write a story, you're going to write a pitch, the hero's journey is not about you. It's not about your product. It's not about your idea. It's not about how great you are, right? It's actually about your customer. They are the hero of the story. So you're going to save the cat. The cat is your customer. But in this case, the customer is also the hero of your story. And that's the story you want to tell, is their story in a way that's then going to show how you're going to transform them from an ordinary existence to a very new world. Okay, so let's go into it some more. Here's secret number 1. Pitch like a screenwriter, okay? So you want to think about that customer as the hero. You're telling a story. In fact, you're telling more than one story. You're telling a story of the opportunity. You're saying to someone, I want you to invest money in me. And so I'm going to tell the story of that opportunity. You're also telling the business story. It's here's the business. Here's the business I'm going to create. Here's the business I'm going to build. And this is why it's going to be valuable and useful. And you're also telling the story of your team. That's those of you that are actually going to make this happen. There is such a thing as a solopreneur. And I've known some solopreneurs. In the end, one of 2 things happen. They stay a solopreneur and they pursue a path that I would call self-employment. Or they build a team and they pursue, a more of a growth model startup. But entrepreneurship is a team sport in my experience. It's not that it can't be done on your own. And guess what? The world is predicting that we will see the first billion-dollar unicorn with a single founder sometime in the next 1 to 3 years. I believe that's possible. But in reality, most companies today are going to require a lot of people, and you're going to have a team, and that team is a critical part of that story. So these are some of the elements of the story as you really walk through your customer's journey or the hero's journey. Okay, so let me give you a little bit more on the Save the Cat so that this makes a little bit more sense. So Save the Cat is a particular framework that's built on a story idea of kind of this 3-act structure. You have kind of beginning, middle, end. And most films, follow this in some regard, unless there's some very, very like postmodern stuff going on, like Memento or Tree of Life or something like that. But for the most part, you're going to see that same structure, beginning, middle, end, and you're going to be seeing a story as it walks through. And this is, I'm not going to go into all these pieces, but like if you want to really break it down to each story beat, There's like every film follows a particular format, a path that goes around. This is all based on a book that was written in the 1980s by someone named Joe Campbell, and it's called A Hero with 1,000 Faces. It essentially suggests that every story that's ever been told is really some version of this story. We'll talk some more about it. But in this case, you have this ordinary world. They're called to adventure. They find a mentor. They cross the threshold. They are tested with allies and enemies. They go through ordeal. They find their road back. And ultimately, they are changed, transformed through the course of the story. And what I'm going to suggest is a really well-crafted pitch is going to take someone through a very similar kind of a journey, though maybe a little bit different in terms of the content of that journey. We can see here, this is, if you really want to see it mapped out, this is where each act has very specific scenes. It's really interesting to watch a film after you've looked at this framework. You watch films like Star Wars or Wizard of Oz, or any film that you've seen recently, all the new Tron movies or Marvel movies, they generally follow this path, and you can see how this plays out, one beat at a time, one story beat at a time. So that's how we're going to write our pitches. So here's a little bit of a mapping with one of the pitch approaches I really like, which is a story pitch framework. This is by an author named Christopher Lipp. This is the one slide in my deck where I'm going to violate one of my own rules, and I'm going to tell you what it is later. The rule is never put like a boatload of words on a slide. And with more than 45 minutes to prepare, I would have broken this up into pieces, so that didn't happen. But what I want to say here is let's just look at the big, bold text, right? Because what's happening here is we're saying what's the problem, what's the solution, what's the market, and what's the business. Because these four components are what are going to be present in any effective pitch deck. Because you're essentially telling everyone, this is the problem I solve, this is, and who I solve it for. The second is, what's the solution? And then you're talking about, is there a market for it? Is the business there for it? So I have actually shown here, you have two different versions, right? First, let's talk short film. So how many in the room pitched for fast pitch earlier? Only one. Okay. All right. So we had 26, 27 people did a fast pitch today. You had 90 seconds, right? Very, very quick format. So in that case, you have to have a very concise message. Every second has to count. Every word has to count. So that's where I like this framework of just really boiling it down to what's the problem? What's the solution? Is there a market for it? Are people spending money on this? And what's the business? How does the business actually operate, right? And so when you think about the three-act play, the problem is really your act one. That's the first step, set the stage. Solution and market is the second act, and that's really where you're kind of pointing to how are you going to bring value to the customer and what customers you're going to bring value to. And the third is the business. The end is really how is this going to be a viable business that your audience, in this case investors, are going to be willing to invest in. All right, so here's secret number two. The slides don't matter. Okay? That's the thing, I think probably one of the things I see done incorrectly more than anything else is a real focus on I got to get the slides perfect. The slides don't really matter. Now, I'll put some caveats on that. They do usually, it is usually a requirement to get the pitch. So most investors will say, send us your pitch deck and then we'll schedule time with you. Why? They want to make sure it's worth their time, so they want to see some things on that pitch deck. So the pitch deck is useful in that case because you're conveying information in that. What I would say is you want to convey enough information to show them that you have a real thing and that you're serious and nothing more. Because the more you tell them, the more likely they're going to see something they don't like and kick it out. What you want to do is make sure there's enough information there to get the meeting, get the opportunity, and then get in the room with the investor and talk with them directly. The other thing I would say about this is every pitch I've done that really led anywhere was not like what we see on Shark Tank or even today, like doing fast pitch or getting up in front of a big audience of people and giving a pitch. There are some scenarios where that takes place. Most pitches happen around a table like this. 3 or 4 people sitting across the table talking with each other. You might bring up a slide or two. You might show some content on the screen, but it's a conversation. A lot of times they won't even let you finish your pitch before they start asking you questions. So they may, let me stop you right there. and you start getting questions, input, unsolicited advice. It happens all the time, right? So one of the things is the slides themselves. I did a video not too long ago called "Pitch Decks Are Useless," right? And it's really, at the same time, I would say creating your pitch deck is priceless and critically important because it's the thinking you do. Looking back at this framework, each one of these items is a critical piece of information that you need to convey in your pitch deck. And so the effort to actually get this information and get it right is way more important than what you actually put on the slide. And a lot of times the slide is just going to be a placeholder while you present the story, you create the narrative, you give it life. So yeah, on Shark Tank, one of the things you'll notice is they usually don't have slides, right? A lot of times they might have a slide or two, but usually in the pitch deck, even in the Shark Tank pitch, they don't have a slide deck that they're going through. Usually the pitch is pretty creative, right? They've spent a lot of time thinking about how they're going to give it some splash. They maybe use the demo of the product, or they're going to provide some data that's thought-provoking or engaging. They have that hook. It's going to really draw everyone in. But some of the basics that you're going to see in any investor pitch, we think about the ask. That comes usually at the end. But you really want to have the product, the solution, the team. Those are going to be some of these key components. All right, so some tips around when you do create slides. This is called the 10-20-30 rule. Robert Kiyosaki, one of the most effective entrepreneurs and we'll say pitchers in the world, in the entrepreneurial sense of the word, has this particular set of numbers. And this is really the guidance. Anybody know what this means? Anybody know what these are? Just curious to see if anybody knows. Okay, 10 slides. No more, right? Anybody seen like a 30, 40, 50 page pitch deck? I have. It's really painful, right? It's basically a document put onto slides. What Kiyosaki says is 10 slides, max. I use a 12 slide format. So the Chris Lip formula that I put up there actually uses 12 slides. But point is, you want to keep it as few slides. You want to have enough slides to have substance, but no more than you need. So 10 slides. The next is 20 minutes. So 20 minutes is the length of pitch that you want to have. Now, sometimes the format dictates your timing. I sat with one of our entrepreneurs incubating in Biata yesterday, and she's like, how can I do this in 5 minutes? I only have 5 minutes to pitch. She was very frustrated, right? I totally get it. Whatever the format is, that's the answer. So Kiyosaki says you don't want it to be more than 20 minutes. You should be about 20 minutes. But if the format is you've got 5 minutes, or a fast pitch, you have 90 seconds, right? So you align your timing to the time frame that you have to work with. But if someone schedules an hour with you, the pitch better be 20 minutes. And in my experience, it has to be 20 minutes because they're going to have 40 minutes of questions for you. And those 40 minutes of questions may come right in the middle of your presentation. I can't even count the number of times it said, why don't you let us walk through the pitch and then we'll answer questions. And usually I can tell within 3 minutes whether that's going to happen or not. Because within 3 minutes they say, let me stop you. I have a question for you. It's like, okay, I hope I'm even going to make it through my 20 minutes worth of material because they're going to stop me all the way through. So that's one of those things you just have to be ready for the situation. All right, so 10 slides, 20 minutes. Anybody want to guess what 30 is? Yes. What's that? Is it font? Yes, it is font size. Nicely done. I should have brought like 100 grand candy bars or something to like pass out. Hey, very good. Yeah. 30-point font. So, you'll notice I mentioned, okay, and here's the example. This is like 20. Can anybody read that? Yeah, because you all have good eyes, right? You can read Robert Kiyosaki. These are like 90. Okay, you see the difference? So the other thing is that forces you to just not put that many words on the page. I would challenge you to have almost no words on any slide on the page because the less words you have, the less they stop listening to you and start reading the slide. I'm going to use this all day as the example. This slide, I even saw you. I lost some of you. Like all of a sudden, you're like reading the slide. I'm going to take it down because I don't even want to do that anymore. It's like the fewer words you have on the screen, the less likely they're going to stop looking at you and start looking at the screen and get distracted, right? So that 30-point font is very important. All right, here's secret number 3. Keep it simple. The tendency to be is like make it really complex, really involved, really dense, lots of information. If you're a technical founder, so if you're a coder, if you're an engineer, if you're a biotech person, if you're a scientist of some kind, the tendency and the risk is you're going to go so deep that everybody's going to like, I have no idea what we're talking about here. I watched somebody it's actually a startup in the AI space. It was a very technical AI product. Give a pitch to a small company that I think really needed their solution. They explained what it was and how it worked in excruciating detail. And I'm getting text messages from the team on the Zoom. And it was like, what is he talking about? It was like he had lost the audience. And so, it's like, those are the kinds of things you want to think about. You need to like be able to provide the detail that's important to the audience, but not go so deep that it just loses everyone. So keep it simple. I usually when someone gives me a pitch and I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but that was really complicated. I'll say, do you have a sibling, cousin, niece, nephew, relative that's 8 years old? And usually the answer is yes. And I'll say, how would you explain this to them? Because if you can explain it to an 8-year-old, you've gotten it to a nice level of abstraction that it's like, this is what the problem is, this is what it's about, and this is how we can make a difference. And that usually helps you to get it to the right level. If an investor is maybe technical or deep in the space, they will ask you questions to find out the rest that they need. But if you can explain it in simple terms, that's really helpful. Most of the investors I've known have said something like, can you explain this to me in simpler terms? Or can you explain this to me like I'm like have an 8th grade education or something like that? And what they're really saying is like, just boil it up for me. Because most people that are investors will tend to be more just general in the way they're thinking. They're thinking at abstractions and higher levels. They're not necessarily getting into the weeds. And so they're like, can you cut through this for me? So keep it simple. So here's the hero's journey, or as we're going to call it, the customer's journey that you want to really bring out. And this is it. The customer's ordinary life. They're dealing with their problem, the pain point, the thing that's bothering them, that's really causing them issues. This is the ordinary life that they're involved in. The second stage is the agent of change. This is your solution. You're bringing to them a new way, a better way. And once they encounter that, once they implement it, once they adopt it, they're going to experience a transformed world. It's going to look very different than it did before, and they will never be the same. They're never going to want to go back, right? That's the story that we're telling for every customer of why do we exist as a startup? Why do I exist as an entrepreneur? I'm going to take somebody that's dealing with some kind of ordinary life that they're not happy with. I'm going to bring to them something that's going to allow them to shift the way they're doing things or to do something in a better way, and their world is transformed. Guess what? That mentor is a minor character in that story. As entrepreneurs, we are a minor character in the story of our customer. And the more we make them the hero, the more they will love us. The more we make ourselves the hero, the more they will have objections, the more they will say, I think I'm going to go somewhere else for a solution to this, right? Empathy is so important, and this framework is essentially helping us to think in those terms. Now, why am I talking so much about the customer when I'm pitching to an investor? Because the investor cares that we're solving a real problem for a real customer that we can get paid for. And that's the real thing. One of the comments that an investor made with one of the last startups that I pitched was the main founder was a domain subject matter expert. They had lived in this world for over 20 years. They had suffered with this problem. They had been stuck in their ordinary life for so long, and they were so frustrated that they were like, I have to do something about it. But there was no solution for them. So they got together, some of the smartest people on their team, and they said, we've got to fix this. They fixed it for themselves. And when they were done fixing it, they got to this transformed world, and they're like, I love my life again. I love my work again. I was so frustrated. Look at what's changed. And then what the founder said is, I want to do this for other people. I want to do this for others. I want to help them to experience this transformed world. So what they did is they went back and they said, I've been where you are. And what I've done now is I've taken this, I've used AI technology to deliver this same thing that I discovered. I have this for you. Try it out. It's super inexpensive. It's super valuable. Give it a shot. And what happened? They're experiencing, wow, my world is different. We told that story to an investor, and they were like, where do we sign? Because they knew this wasn't just like a conceptual idea we came up with. This is somebody had a real problem, they fixed it for themselves, and then they figured out a way to repeatably fix it for others. That made them very, very interested in writing a check and investing. Okay, this one's from before, but you get the idea. Keep your slides simple. All right, number 4, secret number 4 is know your audience and speak their language. So when you talk to an investor, you may have a very different experience when you talk to one kind of investor versus another. Real quick, what are some types of investors we might encounter if we're raising funds? Let's see, where are my entrepreneurship students here? Theo, yeah.
Angel investing.
Angel investors, right. What do we got? VC, venture capital. What else? Where else might you get money?
Like when you go public, like money from the investors, like in stocks.
Yeah, IPO, you can go IPO, yeah.
Pitch competitions.
Pitch competitions, yeah, absolutely. Private equity, right on, yeah. What else?
Incubator programs.
Incubator programs, yes. Family friends, yeah. Jeff Bezos got $300,000 from his parents. Nobody made more money on Amazon than Jeff Bezos' parents. Friends, families, right? So yeah, these are places you would go for investors. Is your language different when you talk to mom and dad versus talking to a sophisticated venture capital firm? Heck yeah. You know, is your pitch different if you're in front of Y Combinator versus directional fast pitch? Probably a little, hopefully not too much, but right? So, you know, knowing who your audience is and knowing the language they speak is really, really important. You give a very different pitch to an investor that's highly sophisticated to one that doesn't really have as much context. You also need to really think about like what's their interest? What is it that they want from this interaction, from this transaction? So here's what investors need to know at a minimum. And I'm pulling this from the pitch doctor, Steve Bowman. Are you the right people to do this? So this is where team comes in. I got a group of people sitting in front of me saying, we're going to go do this, and you're going to give us a bunch of money so that we can do it. And it's like you're looking around the room and saying, is this the right group to do this? Do you have the business savvy? Do you have entrepreneurial experience? Do you have the technical capabilities? Do you understand the product? Do you have a plan? Do you have a work ethic, right? Who the team is matters. A lot of times people put the slide up and it's really just an opportunity to put their picture of their friends with a chief level title on their name next to it and everything. But it's like, to me, that's an important part of the story you're telling is like each person that you list as part of your founder team should be, here's why we are unstoppable. We have this person who's an expert in finance. We have this person who's a coder. We have this person who's a hustler, lifetime salesperson. We have this person who really understands finance. You're showing that your team is composed of the right people, the one that can make it happen. Second thing is, what traction do you have? I cannot overemphasize this. When you're like, we think that thousands of people will buy this. How many bought it so far? Well, none yet. Okay? It's going to be a short conversation. I can just promise you that. Now, just because you're early stage and aren't really at a place where you can get massive traction, you don't have to say I've got thousands and thousands, whatever. You need to be able to show some data that says I put this idea in front of our customers, the people that will buy this, and they have reacted in a way that signals us that they either they have bought a very simple version of it, or they've indicated in a measurable way that they will adopt this in some way. So one of the recent startup that I was involved with, like literally our MVP was a piece of slideware. It was actually a Canva template. We mocked it up, made it look like an app, turned it into a JPEG file, and I sent a picture to a person that fit the customer profile and said, what do you think? And he said, where do I sign up? And I was like, good answer, right? That was customer validation. I didn't even really have a product yet. I had an idea that I visualized. They became our design partner, and they helped us to develop the product. They went through about 9 iterations. So, that's kind of the part of the process. But what happened was with each iteration, we started showing it to more customers and getting their feedback. And we started getting a consistent message, where do I sign up? We finally brought our first commercially ready version of the product to the market, and 24 people signed up immediately. Now, we learned something interesting. We're not ready for more than that, right? Because we had a lot to do. So we had to pause and start putting people on a wait list, but we had traction. We were able to say to a venture capital firm, we had 24 people sign up for this in 2 weeks, and now we had to stop because we need the next wave of funding to be able to support our next move. So what traction do you have? Even if it's small, you can show that if I put this message in front of the right customer, they're going to say, sign me up in some way, shape, or form. Do the numbers work? Okay, this is do the math. This is the moment where I say you got to do the math. And I'm going to say that more and often. But essentially what you want to know is you want to know your numbers, and the person investing is going to want to know that you know your numbers. So if you're like, hey, we're going to make $1 million a year. Awesome. How much is it going to cost? Well, like 10 million. Okay, that's not going to be, you can't make that up in volume, right? As the expression goes, if you want to become a millionaire in the airline industry, start out as a billionaire and buy an airline, right? So, you have to be able to show that you've done the math. We know we can make money in this way, and we know we can produce value in this way, and it's going to be profitable at least someday, and there's going to be a return on investment for the investor. You got to be able to do the math. It's still a projection. There's a lot of guesswork. You have to call out, here are all the assumptions we're making. I mean, entrepreneurship is all about testing assumptions based on data, but you have to know what your numbers are. And it can't be something, well, the slide says this, because they're going to ask you follow-up questions, and they're not asking you follow-up questions because they need to know the answer. They're asking you follow-up questions because they want to know that you know the answer, and you know how to, you know your numbers well enough to do that. So the next one is, where's your edge? Why you? Why are you different? Interesting thing happens when you say, I'm launching a startup, and there are no competitors for this business. Is that a good thing? Maybe. Is it? You look like you got an idea.
Not really, I guess.
Why?
Because you wouldn't have any adversity to really grow as a company or scale. It would just be easy, I guess.
Well,
It's good.
I would take easy.
Share, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's like, for one thing, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right? What do you got?
Your investors have nothing to base you off.
Yeah, well, there's no point in comparison, but what I would say there is that doesn't mean there's not an opportunity. Yeah.
It means that you might not have any customers.
Yeah, it means that nobody really needs that problem to be solved, right? If no one's doing it, it may be one of two things. Either it's really revolutionary, or B, it might be there's no market for it. It could be somewhere in between, but that's one of the things you have to test, right? So where's your edge? It's like you're probably in some kind of competitive space. Why is what you're going to do different, better, give you an advantage over the other players that are out there? And so that's, when we talk about the creator space, there's millions of creators now, and yet what we recognize is there's way more opportunity than there are creators supplying that demand right now, right? But if you're a creator in any space, on any platform, you have to show, why am I different? Why am I unique? And I mean, the obvious answer is, the niche is you. If people know you and see you as authentic and they follow you, they're going to see you as different and unique. But a lot of times, you also have some kind of content that really makes you stand out. And that's every business. You have to have that thing that makes you different. Because otherwise, it's like you're quickly and easily replaced. There's, it's just really the next person could come along and take it out or undercut your price, those kinds of things. But if you have something that's unique, that's different, if you've built a community around what you do, if you have created loyalty in some other way, if you've really found something that that makes people feel good about themselves while they're also getting value out of their product. These are the kinds of things that can really, really make a difference. And it could just be that your business model's different or your technology. All right, what is the opportunity? A VC wants to know how much opportunity is there? Like, are you going to make a few $100,000 a year? Are you going to make a few million? Or are you going to make a few $100 million a year? Right? Like, what's their opportunity for growth? If you say to an investor, if you give me $100,000, I'll turn it into $110,000 in 5 years. How interested are they? What do you think? Interested?
Not at all.
Not at all. Right. Why? I don't know who said that. Did you say it? Or, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, that like 110 grand is gonna like worth less in 5 years than like actual 100 grand like 5 years ago.
Yeah. It's 10% return in 5 years. There's 1,000 ways they could make that kind of return. That's not the kind of return they want. They want a 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x, right? So they're, they have to see that there's enough opportunity there. It's worth their investment capital, and it's worth their opportunity cost to not take one of the 100 other people that's going to pitch them that week, right? All right, and really that one feeds into this one, which is it big enough? So I always say, like, if you say to a VC, we need $50,000, they're probably not going to be super interested, just because even if you got like a, say a 10x return, that's not a big gain. They're going to look for, they want enough invested that they're also going to be able to get enough return from just sheer volume that it's worthwhile, because they're taking on risk by bringing you in. So those are some of the questions you have to answer. And the last one is, can you defend it in the market? And this really ties out to what's your edge. Whatever market you're in, it's like, can you defend your position? Intellectual property, brand recognition, customer loyalty, differentiation, those things really help you to defend in the marketplace. Because if somebody else can come in and replicate what you're doing in a few weeks, all your work's kind of out the window because you can't defend your position in the market. All right, so we already covered these, and great work, because I think everybody got almost all of them. I mean, I think the only one, so usually the first round of investment is you. It's your time, it's usually your money, it's, you've invested energy in it. You're the first investor in your business. And I always say, like, make a business case for yourself before you start, like, spend an hour or two ideating an idea and like trying it out, but like make a business case yourself, because you're going to spend your time. You have 168 hours every week. That's it. And you only get them once this week, and they're gone, right? So that's like high value real estate in your life, because you could be spending that time with your friends, with your loved ones, on education, on work, on anything, creative outlets. It's like, so an hour of that time is hugely valuable. Pretty soon on, it's good to like create a business case for yourself of why should I, me, you, why invest energy in this idea. Next round often is called friends, family, and fools, right? And that's just, sort of the tongue in cheek, but it's essentially, it's like people that know you and are willing to invest because it's you and you're doing it. Or those that look at what you're doing and they say, hey, I don't know much about what you're doing, but I want in, right? It happens. You think about cryptocurrency in the last few years, or you think about NFTs a little while back. Different things, like whatever the big thing is that's happening. There can be an interest in, you're a startup in that space, I want to invest. I don't know anything about it, but I'm hoping it's like a lottery ticket, right? But that's that one. The other one, this one, I don't think anybody mentioned this, but I think some people mentioned versions of it, like accelerator programs, grantors. So that's going to be an organization that is there to support the growth of small business, and they will give out grants of different kinds. States usually have a small business association of some sort, or a small business administration of some sort. In Pennsylvania, we have Ben Franklin Technology Partners as an example of an organization that will invest more like a grant type of an approach. It's a little bit of a hybrid, but that kind of thing. We mentioned angel investors, right? Individuals that have high net worth, maybe interested in a particular industry, maybe they don't have expertise, willing to write a check. Venture capitalists are going to be usually later round, like pre-seed, early seed funding usually comes from one of these first three or four. And then, venture capital, in seed round and series round, that's where you're going to see them start to get interested, because they're going to want to invest anywhere from a few $100,000 to a few million, and some of the more like the larger VCs are going to want to invest tens of millions or hundreds of million. Private equity are really going to be firms that are really, they're usually investing to gain ownership with the idea that maybe they'll buy the company and roll it up with other companies that are in similar space. Or they just think it's a good investment in a space that they understand, or it supports what they're doing in some way. And the other one I'll say is family offices. I've had the opportunity once to pitch to a family office. This is usually a family with high net worth, multi-generational wealth, and they've hired a group of people to manage their financial affairs. And one of the things they do is they will have a more speculative arm that's looking for like the opportunities to move ideas forward, particularly if the owner themselves or the one of the family members has a real interest in a particular type of business. So that could be another place to get capital. So these are the types of investors. So that's it for that one. Secret number 5 is know your numbers. So there's 2 things in your numbers that I think you have to present in your pitch and in some way, shape, or form. The first is market size. How big's the market? So this is, you'll sometimes hear this as the TAM, SAM, SOM. It's like TAM is the total available market, so it's all the money spent in a particular market. SAM is the serviceable, addressable market. So that's going to be the money that's being spent, a subset of that market that's closer to what it is that you're doing. And the serviceable, obtainable market is all the money that's being spent that you could actually capture and replace the current provider's incumbents in it. This is one that I find particularly students have trouble digesting this right away. It takes a while to kind of get your head around it. A lot of times we'll go to the rooftop of Circa Green to talk about TAM, SAM, SOM. Some of you, I think, in the room have probably experienced this, right? And why do we do that? Well, we go up to the top of this building and we look, we just like, let's look around. We can see in every direction all around us the city of Philadelphia, right? We see the edges. Think about how far out that is. Let's imagine for a minute all the commerce that takes place as far as the eye can see, all the money that's being spent. Imagine if we could tally that all up for a year, right? That would be like the total available market for the city of Philadelphia. Like, or think of it as like the GDP for the city, right? So it's all that money being spent. So if I start a business, let's say I start a pizza shop, I can't get all that business, but those dollars are being spent, right? It's like this massive area. Now, if I zoom in a little bit and say, I'm on this block, and there's like, 10 or 12 buildings here, and there's all kinds of commerce going on in these buildings, different kind of businesses and everything going on. What's the value of that? Well, that's a lot closer to where I am. It's a lot more attainable. I can see it closely. I can reach out to it. So that serviceable available market is this kind of closer area. And then when we say, okay, now let's just look at the building that we're standing on top of right now. What is all the commerce that takes place in this building? So we'll say we could get to any inch of this building in a few minutes, if we had security access and everything, right? Because it's right here. And so that's the way you can think of TAM, SAM, SOM. It's like whatever market you're in, the TAM would be everything that's spent in that entire sector. You can't get to all that, but that money is being spent. It just shows that you're in a space that's large and vital and viable and hopefully growing. I'll talk about that in a minute. But serviceable, obtainable markets, when it's maybe in a region that you're going to focus on, or it's a particular type of customer that is going to be interested in what you're doing, or people that are kind of solving the same problem you solve, but in different ways. But at the same time, they may or may not see your solution as viable for them. That's where the serviceable, obtainable market comes in, because that's the ones that right here, right now, in the space I'm in, I could sell a product to this customer and displace what they're doing right now. And when you think about it, you hear the term market share. Imagine this is a pie. If you can say, I can grab a slice of this pie, because anybody in here, I could sell to everybody in that space, and I could get a little slice of that serviceable, obtainable market. That's how you know that you have that one sized up. And you can do a Google search and have a TAM, SAM, SOM for your space in minutes. I would say that's usually not going to be super valuable. But if you spend some time doing some real research, find studies that have been done in your space, find multiple years worth of data, go to things like census.gov or data.gov, which is where you can get a lot of government data, and you start to build your numbers around this is the size of our market. That tells a very good story to investors. It tells them, number one, you know what business you're in. Number two, where you sit in that business. And number three, that there's enough business there that you can obtain some of it. That's a serviceable, obtainable market. And the last thing I'll say about this is a really important factor in all this is what's called the compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, or as students like to call it, CAGR. That is just like how fast year over year is that market expanding, or how much is it projected to expand. If a market has a positive CAGR, if it's growing, that's a good market to get into because there's new dollars being spent there. It's way easier to capture new dollars being spent than ones that are already being spent from the past. If it's a negative CAGR, think really, really carefully about whether that's a market you want to get into. Because if a market's receding, that means that all the current players are getting desperate to stay in business, and they'll do things to just try to keep in business, and there's not as many. You're chasing fewer dollars as customers go away. So that's market size. That's the first thing. You really need to know your numbers. And the second is you need to know your financials. And this isn't a finance talk, so I won't go into a lot of detail. But you need to be able to present an idea of, in the next 3 to 5 years, here's what I think I can sell. And it's best if you can do this down to the unit level. So whatever you're selling, if it's a subscription, it's what maybe called the monthly recurring revenue for each subscription. If it's a physical product, it's how many units can I sell? If it's a service, how many hours of that service or how many kind of service delivery items can we do? And then projecting that out 3 years, 5 years. This is a projection. It's not a prediction, right? We don't know what the future is. But if you can go down and say to the month by month level, I'm going to sell this many, and here's why. And it's like, you know what? And at this month, I'm going to hire 2 more salespeople, and then I'm going to double my sales. And then at this place, we're going to add an inside group that can, sell more. And you tell a story of the numbers of how this is how we're going to invest in the business over time. This is how it's going to drive revenue. And at the same time, you've got to be tracking against your costs. How long are you going to go before burning cash, before you're making money, at least, even if it's not profitable, but at least breaking even? And then after you do start to make a profit, what kind of profitability do you have? You also have to decide, is profitability my goal? Because if you want a lifestyle business, it is. You want to get profitable, and you want to start paying yourself as quick as you can. If you're looking for a high growth startup, it's the opposite. Profitability is not the goal is growth. So the more you can invest to increase your rate of growth, the faster your company increases in value. That's more important. So that's where knowing your numbers in terms of market size and financial projections, that's really critical. And it could be a simple slide that you put on the screen, but when the investor starts asking questions, you better be ready to talk details, down to whatever level that they're interested in. So know your numbers. All right, here's secret number 6, last one. Make a very specific ask and justify every single dollar. And I would say here, not a single one of them on this grid should say, my salary. I can warn you now, that will get you into trouble really quickly. That's not to say you can't pay yourself when you get funded, but that can't be the main thing. If you're going to pay yourself anything, it better be connected to something that's in the business. But usually some version of a pie chart or donut or whatever kind of form you want to visualize it. But essentially you want to be able to say to an investor when they say, okay, what is it you need? You want to be able to say, I need $200,000 to grow my customer base by a factor of 5 in the next 12 months, right? Because essentially what you're saying is, here's what you're buying if you invest in us, and here's what that costs. And they're going to say, how are you going to do that? Well, that's what I'm going to say right here. Well, here's the allocation. We're going to invest in digital advertising, content marketing, email marketing, social media. Like, this is a very marketing-centric one, right? The example I grabbed here. But it's probably going to be things like product development. It's going to be things like customer development. It's going to be things like sales, customer support, customer success, right? Infrastructure, whatever it is that the business needs to grow to the next level. And you're getting that investment capital not because, oh, we're out of money, we better get some investment capital. No, that's not the story you should be telling an investor. You say to an investor, this is a great investment, and we'd be able to grow a lot faster if we had your dollars. And then the negotiation of like what they're going to invest, how much they're going to invest, and how much they get, that's called the valuation. And that is the subject of every Rob Morier class. I highly recommend that you take those because that's really important. I'm not going to try to cover that today. But when you see them negotiating on Shark Tank, what they're haggling over is the value of the business. The investor wants that number to be as low as possible until they write you a check. And then they want that to be as high as possible. So you want to see an investor, their whole mentality turn overnight, get them to write a check. Because you're going to say, I don't know, this isn't that great. I don't know if this is really going to be worth much. They write that check, they're going to be out in the world. Have you seen this? This is the next big thing. I'm like, overnight. No lie. So that's what the allocation is doing. You're basically telling the investor what they're buying, what they're going to get for it, and how you're going to make it happen. All right, here's your bonus tip for today. Read the room. Whatever it is you go in thinking you're going to do in a pitch, recognize when it's not going the way you wanted. I've been in a number of pitches where it was pretty clear within 5 minutes that it was over. Like, you don't have to give away the secret sauce if you can tell the game is over, right? So, you kind of read the room, you figure out. Going with a really like pressing in on an ask when someone's pretty uneasy about it, if you feel that from them, it's like take a step back. Like, you're like, hey, listen, we're looking for $200,000. Here's some of the things we want to do. If you think it's something you'd like to pursue further, we'd love to, go further in due diligence. Whereas, or if they're asking like, well, when do you need to get started and how quick could you do this? And, you kind of read there's like a lot of energy. It's like, you might be asking more questions like, what's your timing of like, if you were to decide to invest this, how long would you expect before you could invest, or what would your due diligence look like? Read the room. If they all of a sudden are telling you all kinds of details about your main competitor, like back up. They know something, right? They may already be talking to a competitor and you don't want to hand them a bunch of information that ends up getting out, right? So just read the room. And that's just, that one I could give you a million examples of what I mean by that, but just pay attention to the conversation you're having. Usually if you find that it almost feels like they just rolled around to the same side of the table as you, and it's like, oh, we could do this, and how about this, and can we help you with that? Versus like they start throwing you all kinds of questions. Well, do you really even think that could work? I mean, really? And it's like, you say, well, such and such, here's a data point. Yeah, but was that study, all of a sudden you're getting a lot of like pushback. Like that's usually a sign that they're not buying what you're selling. So, and a lot of times these are conversations. If someone's going to invest in you, they're going to be a relationship that you have for a long time. They are going to be in your stuff. If you've never had an investor as you're a founder, you're used to calling your own shots. The minute you have an investor, you got a boss. And so, just read the room because you're interviewing them just as much as they are you. At one point, I mentioned a situation where I had two investors coming at us. There were several factors that went into them. Both could have been very, very valuable. But one of the factors we looked at is which is the best culture fit for us? What kind of relationship do we want to have with our VC? Because sometimes there'll be people who write a big check, but then they're not involved. And then they're not really helping you other than just cash. There's a lot of ways you can get cash. And that can be expensive if they're not bringing strategic value. So that's it. That's what I would say is if you're going to pitch like a pro, you need to save the cat.